Welcome back to E.W. Jackson for President. Great to have you with me this morning. Hope the day is already going well for you. And a lot to talk about today. We've got to continually pray for our nation and pray for the circumstances that are swirling around us because they really don't seem to be getting any better. And my wife asked me this morning, she said, where are all the Christians who agree with you, who think like we think? I say, well, they're out there. It's difficult to reach them because the mainstream media will essentially not cover us, not acknowledge us. In fact, that's true for conservative media. Breitbart News is one of my favorite sites to go to for an overview of the news. I mean, I read a lot of different stuff. I read the Daily Caller, and I read Western Journal, and what else? Sometimes Town Hall. I don't read Town Hall as much, but certainly the Washington Times, Epoch Times, seeing what are they putting out there? What are their main stories? But to tell you the truth, there does seem to be, even among conservative media, sort of a willingness to ignore Christians, as if we don't really matter, as if we're not really part of the discussion. I mean, let me give you a perfect example. Now, I haven't really talked much about the difficulties former President Trump is having, mainly because I just don't want to get into the weeds on all of that. We know that the basic overview is they're out to get him. I mean, they are out to get the man. There's no question about that. Anybody who doesn't see that, I don't care whether you're liberal or conservative, you don't see that, you're really blind. They're out to get him. However, it is also true, and I've tried to live by this maxim since I got involved in conservative politics. Don't give them ammunition. Yes, they're out to get you. Don't give them ammunition. Pay your taxes. Don't break the law. If you're going to break the law, I mean, you do it in a peaceful, orderly way as a protest against the law that you consider to be unjust. I mean, obviously, that's part of what we as Americans sometimes find that we have to do. I mean, that's how Dr. King got the civil rights movement front and center in the hearts and minds of the American people by peacefully opposing laws that he considered to be unjust. But that's one thing. But just skirting the law, breaking the law, doing things that you know are not right, and that you know are violations of the law, and then maybe essentially trying to hide them or that kind of thing. I mean, you're asking for trouble. Even if that is an unjust law, even if you don't agree with it, that's not the way to go about it. Pretending it's not there and then trying to hide the fact that you pretended it's not there. So at any rate, I was reading this morning this article about the, I really, sadly, I should know this young lady because was one of my former colleagues on AFR, and I had her on as a guest before her program started, Jenna Ellis, but I don't really know her. She never had me on her program, but I had her on mine. Even when my book came out, she never invited me to come and talk about my book. But anyway, she was a lawyer for Donald Trump. She's now pleaded guilty in the Georgia election case. And by the way, I just say that just by way of I just don't know her. I don't have any relationship with her at all, even though we were on the same network. But she's pleaded guilty to a felony count of aiding and abetting false statements, verbally and in writing, in connection with the Trump campaign 2020 election challenge. And there's some issue of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that were raised to support her legal defense, that she may have to give all that back because it was obtained under false pretenses. Now, again, she has pleaded guilty. Okay, I'm not talking about what she's accused of, what she's going to trial for, but she has pleaded guilty. And apparently a very tearful confession of wrongdoing, which is not good for former President Trump, but a tearful confession of wrongdoing. Let me see if I can find the quotes. But at any rate, I said all that I'm getting to a point. I'll find the quote here. Oh, here we go. Here it is. She said, as she apparently cried standing in front of the judge, as an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously. I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. But she says, in the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believe that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. And she goes on to say, but in the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election, I failed to do my due diligence. She said she would not have represented Trump if I knew then what I know now. I would not have represented Trump if I knew then what I know now. In other words, what she's saying there is, I was lied to, I was fed lies, I repeated those lies, I'm culpable for those lies, but the lies didn't originate with me, others fed them to me. That's why she says that if she had it to do over again, she would not have represented Donald Trump, because the implication there is she's turning state's evidence too. She and Sidney Powell turning state's evidence. The implication there is that Donald Trump was the originator of the falsehoods and the lies. Now, what those lies are, I don't know. I mean, is it a lie to say I doubt the legality or the accuracy or however you might describe it, of the election because of various factors? Is that a lie? And that's not a lie. I mean, it's a statement of an opinion, and we in America, I think, still have the right to an opinion. But apparently this goes to factual matters where it was known that the facts being put forth weren't accurate, and they were put forth anyway. Because it's not a lie to advance an opinion about something. That's not a lie. Now, opinion can be based on bad facts, and you can say based on what I know, and what you know could be wrong, but that still doesn't make the opinion a lie. It just makes the opinion a weak opinion because it's based on weak evidence, but it doesn't make it a lie. But apparently, she is going down. I don't know what the sentence for her is going to be. There's a lot of chatter these days about President Trump, former President Trump, actually going to jail. I don't know what to make of that. I'm not close enough to the situation to know, but people who I do know who are fairly close to the situation tell me that they think that he is going to go to jail. It'll either be a kind of house arrest or something, or it'll be a short sentence, 30 days, 60 days, with a long period of probation. But he is going to emerge from this a convicted felon. Now, all this may get overturned by the Supreme Court, but that's where we are now. Now, frankly, I didn't get into all of this to really hash that out. Like I said, I believe that they're out to get former President Trump. But my goodness gracious, don't give them ammunition. And I think he is somebody who picks up boxes of ammunition and shoves it over to him and says, here you go. And that could end up being his downfall. He could end up being convicted by the words of his own mouth, but the things he himself has said. But now we've got two people who worked very diligently for him who are now pleading guilty and turning state's evidence. I think there are a couple of others as well. It does not portend well. Here's the point I wanted to get to. Jenna Ellis, I believe she still is a talk show host for American Family Radio. I haven't heard anything different, but she certainly was. They never mentioned that in the story. I mean, American Family Radio is a national radio network. If she were a syndicated talk show host with 200 stations for some other network, I guarantee you they would mention that in their story about her background. But because it's American Family Radio, because it's a Christian network, it doesn't even get a mention. A national network with 200 radio stations across the country. That's what I'm facing. It's almost, and this is Breitbart. This is a conservative organ. And they don't even mention as part of her resume. Now, it may be the American Family Radio would not rather it not be mentioned. I don't know. I haven't talked to them about this, but that's another matter. The reporters, you would think, in trying to give a full picture of her background, could talk about the fact that she's been, could at least acknowledge because to me, that's a major item on her resume. Not even mentioned. They mentioned that after she was indicted, they mentioned that she was on Sirius XM and Breitbart News to criticize the indictment. So that's it. So obviously they don't, excuse me. You could argue, well, they don't mention any other media that she did either. But I'm not talking about interviews that she did. I'm talking about a major platform that she had to espouse her viewpoint. So, at any rate, I know people in the inner circle of the Trump organization and people who know him personally and talk to him. And from time to time, there would be an outreach to me by someone who say, hey, we want you to come on and we want you to do this. We want you to be a part of his Ministers Advisory Board. Somebody approached me about that one time. But nothing ever panned out. And I have to say, folks, I'm glad it didn't. I really am. I'm glad it didn't. Because I'm glad I wasn't part of that inner circle. Because there are people right now who, if I named them, you'd know who they are. People right now who behind the scenes are dealing with all kinds of civil suits and lawsuits over their association with Donald Trump. The association itself just proved to be toxic. Now, I was certainly supporting him. Of course, as a candidate myself, I'm not supporting him this year. We'll see how all of that pans out. But I certainly was supporting him, and I don't regret that. I think it was the right thing to do. And I think he was the right man for the job. But I'm glad that I wasn't drawn into his inner circle, the small circle of people around him who got close enough to him to get burned by all the stuff that has now gone on around him. And so, because look, there are people right now who are not making the news, who are under tremendous financial pressure trying to defend themselves against all the legal attacks coming against them. And I just thank God I'm not a part of that. And it's not because I wouldn't have been in that circle. Because if I'd been invited, okay, come on and join this, or come on and go, I would have probably done it. But it just never panned out. And I'm not one of those people to go begging and maneuvering, trying to get myself into something. That's not me. I just don't operate that way. I believe that God will open doors for me, and I will gladly walk through them in obedience to Him. But I'm not going begging people to please put me on this, and please use me here, and please let me speak, and please. No, I'm not wired that way. I just can't do it. So I wasn't calling people, hey man, can you put me on that advisory board? Hey, can I be a part of this? Can I be? That's just not. I know some people are quite comfortable with that. I've had friends who they can do it, and that's not a criticism or put down of anybody who that guy just has a different style. I just can't do it. I can't do it. So the Lord never saw fit then for me to be a part of that. And you know what? Sitting back from the perspective I'm at right now, I'm glad. I really am, because to me, it's not like they're fighting for the country. They're now fighting for their lives. And maybe it started out the right way, but they got caught in the net. And like I said, when you get to a point where you're pleading guilty and tearfully acknowledging that you violated the law, and now you're going to turn state's evidence on your former boss, man, that's a bad place to be. That's a bad place to be. And by the way, and here again, I don't say that in any harsh judgment of these folks. We need to pray for them, pray for the president, because there's no telling how all this is going to ultimately play out, maybe before the Supreme Court. We just don't know. What we do know right now is that folks are in trouble over this stuff, and they have found weak spots at which to bring them to their knees, by which to bring them to their knees. And it's happening. We're watching it happen. So I hope that all of that works out. I took much too much time on that. Let me mention a couple of other things I wanted to get to. Representative Mike Johnson has now got the nomination for Speaker of the House. And it does appear, and I say that very advisedly now, okay, with 15 to 20 caveats. It does appear that he is acceptable to both sides, and it does appear that he will be voted in as the next Speaker of the House. It does appear. Now, apparently he's a constitutional conservative. I don't know him. He's from Louisiana. Don't really know anything about him. But if he is about to become Speaker of the House, if he becomes Speaker of the House, we're going to learn a lot about him. I just hope that he is going to lead the conservatives in the Republican caucus, and therefore I hope the entire caucus in the way the country needs to go. So we'll watch that unfold. The main thing I want to talk about, really, which I'd spent too much time on that Trump situation, but the main thing I really want to talk about is what's happening with illegal immigration, because Biden right now is trying to expand quietly under the covers, trying to expand the H-1B immigration program, which brings professionals in to take professional jobs from foreign countries, brings professionals from foreign countries into our country to take professional jobs. Folks, the last data I looked at, and forgive me, I don't remember the source now, but showed that the American wages had decreased by 5% as a result of illegal immigrants coming in competing with Americans for cheap labor. 5%. My guess is that's probably an understatement. We're in an inflationary period right now. We know that wages have eroded anyway, and then you got the pressure of illegal immigration on top of that. I mean, you've really got a double or triple whammy there working against the American worker. Well, add to that this H-1B visa program that Biden wants to expand. He wants to bring more young students in to take college-age jobs. You know, they just graduated from college, to take these jobs from and compete with American college graduates. It just brings me to this point. The open border is bad enough, but it seems that anything they can do to undermine the American people, to hurt the American people, to subvert the American people, to replace the American people, if you will, certainly supplant the American people, in order to solidify their own power, they do. I mean, almost anything, or anything they can get away with, they do, because most people are not aware that he's, at a time when we are flooded with illegal immigrants, he's trying to expand the H-1B visa program to bring in more workers into our country. I mean, it's just, again, you can't understand this stuff unless you understand that they just don't care about the American people. They don't care about us. They care about their own power. They care about their own position. They care about their own money. They don't care about us. And there's one issue that that I haven't mentioned in a bit that needs to be addressed with this. Once again, please share this with any American you know of African ancestry. Because here's the question. Why do you keep voting for people who take actions that undermine the well-being of the community from which you come? Which means ultimately it can get to you. It can. And so, for example, all this illegal immigration, who does it hurt first? It hurts the lowest level workers. It hurts entry level workers. It hurts low wage workers. And who is disproportionately represented among low wage workers? Black folks. So in other words, the whole immigration approach of the Biden administration is a direct assault on the economic well-being of the black community, which they claim to love so much and care so much about. I mean, when are people going to wake up to the fact that these folks, no matter what they say, their actions are geared toward, certainly lend themselves toward, the undermining and the destruction of the black community, the black family, the black worker, you name it. They don't do anything that helps, and yet they keep getting 85 to 90% of the votes. And when in the world are people going to wake up to the fact that you're being used, you're being conned, that they don't care about you? I mean, that's why they abort 37 to 40% of your babies. Because they don't care about you. They don't care about your community. They don't care about your children. That's why it's mainly inner city schools across the country. It's happening everywhere, but mainly inner city schools across the country. They're pushing all of this radical leftist ideology rather than educating these children, because they don't care about your children being educated. They don't care about the American children in general. I'm just saying it's much more acutely felt in the black community because of high levels of poverty and already a downward spiral of educational deficiencies. I mean, so as I said before, only 13% of black students who manage to graduate from high school, that's just the graduates, only 13% are reading at their appropriate grade level. 87% are functionally illiterate, reading at an 8th grade level or below. How in the world do you keep voting for people who are doing that? And by the way, that's certainly not a plug for Republicans, because I'm pretty disgusted with the Republican Party right now. But I've always voted the person anyway. The principles of the individual, the candidate, what that candidate represents, who that candidate is, not the party label that candidate wears. Because you could have an R behind your name, and it's liable to mean anything when the lights are turned out. Who knows what it means? It could mean anything but conservative. So it's not ultimately about the party label, because I'm disgusted. It could mean Rana. But the Democrat Party has just gone, is wholly demonized. It really is, folks. I mean, and this is just another indication of it. You can go right down the line. Again, all the George Soros, who is a big Democrat, he's the largest Democrat donor, all of the 75 prosecutors across the country that he's helped elect, and every single one of them is helping to get more black folks killed because they're releasing more criminals back into the street to rape, rob, and murder. And you keep voting for these people. I mean, I understand the indoctrination. I understand the brainwashing. I understand those Republicans are racist. Those conservatives are racist. They are against you. Okay? I understand hearing that. I understand, maybe being made to believe that. But how can you then be made to believe that Democrats, who were the prime movers in creating the Ku Klux Klan, the prime movers in blocking black folks from voting, the prime movers in slavery in the South, the prime movers in maintaining Jim Crow segregation after the Civil War was over, How can you vote for Democrats who want to abort your babies, miseducate your children, and leave them functionally illiterate, have them dying in the streets from crime running rampant in the streets of your communities, and you keep voting for these people because they claim that they're not racist and the other people are? It just doesn't make it. And bringing people in to compete for your jobs. I mean, by the millions. Where do you think most of these folks are going to end up? They're going to end up in or near affecting directly the black community. That's where they're going to end up. So at some point, people have to wake up. And particularly Christians. Christians, most of all, have to wake up. You know, it just, yeah. One other thing I'll mention, you know, the White House is actually holding wellness meetings for Muslims, Arabs, and Palestinians. Now, they've thrown Jewish staff members in there, which amazes me because that means there's a lot of Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian people working at the White House. We shouldn't be surprised, but go figure. I mean, there aren't that many Palestinian Muslims and Arab Americans in the country. How does so many get in the White House that you need to have wellness meetings for them? Well, I'll tell you how, because once again, they're not interested in the American people. They're not interested in those of us who are born here, those of us who love our country. Do you realize that right now, Joe Biden is taking us toward a time when there will be one person in America who is born outside the country, who came here as who is a foreigner, put it that way, to each American born here? I mean, we've already got 50 million Americans, 50 million in this country who were not born here. 50 million, folks. That's over 15%. It's over 15%, 16, 17%. Have you heard of the Pareto principle? The Pareto principle says that if you can get 20% of a population, 20% of a group, 20% of an entity altered in their thinking, their behavior, you can affect the entire group. You need 20%. And it seems to me that the Democrat Party is moving toward having 20% of the country as not Americans, so that you can continue to promote this anti-American, un-American mindset and have the whole country, before you know it, no longer even thinking of ourselves as Americans. But that doesn't matter. We're citizens of the world, as Barack Obama said it. I mean, which again is just stupid. You can't be a citizen of a planet. You are a citizen of a governmental entity. So since there is no governmental entity, you are not a citizen of the world. But that's a thing devoutly to be wished by him and all these other globalists. We know who needs America. Let's just be citizens of the world. Well, that's what the Antichrist is going to give them. And they're probably going to be here to get it. Probably going to be here for every bit of it. Okay, look, that's going to do it for today. Pray for us. You know where we are in our campaign. I won't bore you with the further details about that. But if you want to support me, go to ewjacksonforpresident.com, ewjacksonforpresident.com. As I said, the campaign does still have bills. We do still have staff to pay because we are still meeting, thinking, planning what the next moves are. We got a fundraiser coming up in about 2 weeks. A fundraiser coming up in about 2 weeks. ewjacksonforpresident.com. The 2020 pathway to victory. Whew, man, I tell you what, it's a hard path. Pray for 20 minutes, 3 minutes a day. Give $20.24 as often as you can, and thank all of you for doing this stuff. And then talk to 20 people, or 10 or 5 or 15 or 30 or 100 or 1,000, however many you have access to. If you got a Twitter account and you got a number of followers on you, whether you do or not, post my website on your Twitter account. Say, I support E.W. Jackson for president. Why is the mainstream media talking about him, acknowledging his candidacy? Because, folks, they just like a human being, you deprive them of oxygen, they die. And they figure we deprive him of any media, he dies. His campaign dies. And that's what they're counting on. But they don't realize I've got resurrection power in me. Amen. Through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So we are not dead. If you want to support STAND, staying true to America's national destiny, go to standamerica.us, standamerica.us. We got a lot of things going on with that. We are revamping the youth, the Forgotten Children's Project website. It's going to become America's Forgotten Children. We're going to that website is going to be very, very powerful for chronicling all these children that are being murdered around the country since this whole ridiculous defund the police, dismantle the police movement began, which is really when it turns out in terms of its impact, one of the most racist movements that the country's ever seen, because basically what it really did was to help get more black people killed. That's what it did. The Ku Klux Klan couldn't have been happier about it. I mean, at some point, folks, we got to look at what the real results are as opposed to all this ridiculous rhetoric that tells like, oh, yeah, we're for you, while they stab you in your back and just run the dagger down your back and split your guts open. I mean, I'm tired of all this posturing and stuff while people do everything they can to destroy you. And that's exactly what the Democrat Party is doing. And, of course, my church, I'll be at church on Sunday. I'm going to be preaching out of the book of Revelation, chapter 13. Join us, 11 a.m. every Sunday at the 943 Canal Drive in Chesapeake, Virginia. And, by the way, and if you want to get a copy of my book, it's thecall.org is the website, thecall.org, if you want to give there or want to interact with us there. And my book, The Sweet Land of Liberty, Reflections of a Patriot Descended from Slaves. You can get it at a 15% discount at Fidelis website, which is faithfultext.com. faithfultext.com. You can buy it or get it as a Patriot Partner with a $25 a month pledge, and I will send you a signed, numbered copy of my book. I take care of that every Friday, so whatever orders you put in this week, whatever signups you do this week, on Friday I'll be signing the books, and the first thing next week the books will go out. We got a little system going, because I kind of went during the campaign. It was kind of difficult to get to, so a number of you kept waiting, but they're all out now. We're going to keep up with them from this point forward. And so, folks, just keep praying, keep believing. Don't give in, don't give up. Don't you dare surrender to despair, depression, discouragement. Because look, that's the devil's stock in trade. Because it's the deception that says things are never going to change, they're never going to get any better. Oh, woe is me. That's a deception. Because the Bible says the things of this world are subject to change. They're going to change. God's going to wipe all this mess out anyway. That's the bottom line. The question is, where are we going to stand when the time comes that he effects his ultimate conclusion to all of this? And of course, more broadly speaking, where is our country going to stand? Are we going to be a blessed nation because our God is the Lord? Are we going to be a cursed nation because we've fallen into idolatry and self-worship and greed and totalitarianism and tyranny and all the things that evil produces, in which case we'll be a goat nation, a wicked nation, a nation that is turned into hell. I want us to be a nation whose God is the Lord. I want us to create to work on creating an America that's about as close to heaven as you can get. So you stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit. because we are on God's side.